A man answered the phone, and he said, "Where are you?" And they said, you stay there, we'll be there. There's been an accident.
This accidental derailment that I've been in suddenly goes from being an accident to an attempt to kill everybody off the train.
There are 2,000 skiers in the area. Why should he necessarily be among the 150 in the tragic train?
We rushed outside and we saw a mushroom cloud. My wife began crying and said, "Our home is gone."
In the next hour, derailed, the hidden dangers behind train travel. Sometimes the risk you never think about may be the greatest risk of all. Next time you're sitting impatiently at a railway crossing, take a look at the mile-long snake of cars as it sways past you. Really look, and think about what's inside. Sulfuric acid, ammonium nitrate, sodium hydroxide. Individually, all relatively safe in their tanks, but together, a deadly chemical cocktail. At any given moment, more than 10,000 hazardous chemical tanker cars weave through communities. And once every 2 weeks, a toxic train runs off its rails. California's treacherous El Cajon Junction. A 40-car freight train derails, igniting its highly explosive chemical cargo. Alberton, Montana. A 71-car freight train tumbles off the tracks in the early morning hours. Ruptured tankers leak deadly chlorine gas and corrosive potassium hydroxide. 1,000 people are forced to leave their homes. Rail companies accidentally spill hazardous chemicals over 1,000 times a year. But when a toxic train derails, the results are disastrous. You never give it a second thought until it's on your doorstep.
When we built this place, it was our dream home.
Memorial Day weekend in Eunice, Louisiana. A holiday for many in this Cajun town of 12,000. For Joe Ortega, it was a chance to take some time off from his busy law practice and tend to his prized collection of more than 200 doves.
My little boy had just gotten out of school the day before in order to start his summer vacation. So we were looking forward to the summer.
For Joe's 12-year-old son, Stefan, summer means swimming at the pool near their home.
You can only stay for a couple of hours, though.
I asked my mom if I could go, and she says, "Well, you want me to go with you?" You know how most moms worry about you.
It may be a holiday for the Ortega family, but it's business as usual for the crew of a Union Pacific freight train traveling from Freeport, Texas, to Livonia, Louisiana. The heavily loaded freight train is towing 113 cars of dangerous cargo.
That morning, I got up just like any other Saturday morning. Went outside in order to feed my birds and water the birds.
As he feeds his doves, Joe hears the faint sound of a train pass near his backyard. Living close to the tracks, he's learned to ignore the sound. But then, something catches his attention.
I was seeing the smoke. I knew Stefan was out towards that area, and I was concerned about him.
We hear this kaboom, and the smoke rises up and this fire comes up. I ducked my head in the pool for about 10 seconds just because the heat was so intense, and I get out and I run out. Dad!
The Union Pacific freight train has jumped the tracks, throwing its 33 lethal rail cars like toys. Seconds later, a chemical fireball shoots 200 feet into the air. The engineer and crew survive the explosions, but for the town of Eunice, the danger had just begun. With the explosions erupting,
Where are you going?
Joe prepares his family to flee.
I'll be there in a little bit. Okay. I got to close up the house.
It was very difficult, a very empty feeling. You were being told to leave. Of course, you know, I mean, you were going to follow those instructions because you were worried about your safety, the safety of your wife, the safety of your son. But in the back of your mind, you have to wonder, what are you going to find when you get back here?
More than 3,000 people in a 2.5-mile radius are forced to leave their homes. 3 miles away, Safe at a friend's house, the Ortega family waits and worries.
We heard and felt a large explosion. We rushed outside and we saw a mushroom cloud. I mean, it was a mushroom cloud. At that particular point, my wife began crying and said, "Our home is gone."
Every year, more than 30,000 tons of toxic cargo roll through Louisiana by rail. The state has the greatest concentration of oil, gas, and petrochemical production facilities in the Western Hemisphere, earning it the unfortunate nickname, Chemical Alley. To deal with this potentially dangerous reality, Louisiana has 15 hazmat teams. It is the Louisiana State Police hazmat team that responds to the Eunice spill.
This is truly, one of the ones that you would say would be your worst nightmare. We had a vapor hazard, we had a fire hazard, we had a toxicity hazard. So as a hazmat responder, it had all the elements.
The first order of business for the hazmat team is to learn from the rail company exactly what chemicals were on board and where on the train they were located. The information is helpful, but only to a point.
We don't know what condition the cars are in now that they've been tossed and other cars have fallen in on them. We don't know what's leaking or not leaking, or in turn, what cars have now been damaged to the point where they can no longer hold the product in them.
The deadly toxic mixture on board this train included acrylic acid, caustic soda, dichloropropane, and a laundry list of others, all pressurized and leaking. If the train had derailed just 3 minutes later, it would have occurred in the middle of downtown Eunice.
We were lucky that where it did derail, there was not a lot of people in the immediate area, because immediately the cars that were derailing caught fire, and within a few minutes one of the cars failed and literally exploded.
That series of explosions and noxious fumes keeps even the hazmat team at bay for a full 24 hours. What becomes the most dangerous obstacle for the hazmat team is a car that hasn't derailed at all. A tanker filled with ethylene oxide used to make solvents and adhesives is damaged and leaking.
If we didn't fire it, there was a great potential for this car to fail, and meaning it would have blevid, it would have exploded, and caused a large explosion.
Flaring is a process of slowly burning off or vaporizing the contents of the tank.
This particular car, with the amount of product on it, is basically like dropping a large bomb on a town. It's very volatile and has a great explosive shock effect.
The flaring process works. The immediate danger is over. The hazmat team's job is done. However, according to chemist Wilma Subra, an expert on toxic chemicals, the real damage might not be felt for decades. The EPA tested the air and found no evidence that warranted soil and surface testing before the evacuation order was lifted. State authorities allowed citizens back in their homes, but Subra says airborne fallout from the chemical fires did settle down on the community. Wilma Subra was hired by residents to interpret samples taken in and around Eunice after the evacuation order was lifted. She found what she believes are potentially harmful levels of toxins.
When I was asked to look at the data, you could clearly see how the houses in which the people had been allowed to go back in and have been living in all this time were contaminated with known human cancer-causing agents, with PCBs, with dioxins, and these are very, very toxic at very small quantities.
The Federal Environmental Protection Agency and the Louisiana Department of Environmental Quality have the authority to inspect a residential area near a spill for ongoing chemical contamination before an evacuation order is lifted. In Eunice, this was not done, and at present there is no state or federal legislation requiring such evaluations. 8 days later, Joe Ortega and his family are allowed back in their home. They return to find doors blown off hinges, cracks in walls, and roof overhangs buckled from the explosions. The physical damage is minimal, but outside his home, Joe makes a chilling discovery.
I had about 200 birds, and I started losing some immediately, and gradually through the summer. you know, I've ended up losing most of them.
The birds appear to have suffered severe liver damage, which may have been caused by airborne toxins from the chemical spill.
But we don't know what can happen with us. You could see what happened with our doves. We're not sure what's happening.
And yet you have to let your child go on and play in the yard. You have to let your dogs go on and play in the yard. You have to live in it, and you don't know what you're living in. I mean, you're trying to raise a 12-year-old son, and you don't know if he's not going to be diagnosed with liver cancer 30 years from now, and who's to say it's not from having been exposed to this dump.
The National Transportation Safety Board says it will take a year to 14 months to determine the exact cause of this derailment and chemical spill. Residents of Eunice fear the real human damage from this spill will be felt many years down the road. For some, that might be too late. These are the innocent pastimes of youth. Hold your ear to the tracks and hear the engines coming. Drop a penny and wait for it to be flattened under the steel wheels. A bittersweet, blissful day. Tragedy is far from anyone's mind. Single mom Astrid Harvey works a few days a week as a hairdresser in Lake Forest, California. But Astrid spends most of her time with her son Christian, rediscovering the world through his 4-year-old eyes.
And we walked up on top of a hill, and he's standing on top of the hill, and it was sort of a panoramic view. And he looked at me and says, "Wow, Mommy, look, it's the whole world. Isn't it beautiful?"
Cutting through the serene backyards of Astrid and Christian's neighborhood, a railway. Every day, up to 30 trains track this route between San Diego and Los Angeles, traveling at speeds of up to 90 miles an hour. Rail lines like this are common in U.S. communities, and without a train in sight, pedestrians often walk the line, the hazardous line between risk and tragedy. February 17, 1996. Astrid is at work. She's dropped Christian off with the babysitter for the day.
And I told him, "I love you, Christian." And he told me he loved me, and
It's a sunny day. The babysitter, his 2 daughters, and Christian head out for a midday walk. They come to a railway track. It's a direct path through the neighborhood. The babysitter leads the children north, their backs to the midday sun. Further down the line, Amtrak train 557 is traveling at 90 miles an hour. It's just afternoon, halfway through Astrid's day at the salon.
I didn't have a very busy day, and I told Christian, I said, "I'll be home early." We were all going to go to church that night.
On the tracks, Christian and the other kids act their age, balancing on rails, giggling, oblivious to the deadly path they are on. The babysitter guides the children along the narrow stretch. How a quick decision to walk on the tracks has dire consequences. When Derailed continues.
Tonight on Junkyard Invasion Week.
The finals, where the teams build sophisticated machines and then use them as battering rams. Junkyard Invasion Week, Building Bashers. Tonight at 8, only on TLC.
What's the matter, Bob?
All this paperwork from my mortgage broker is driving me crazy.
Perhaps you should log on to Ditech.com.
Hey, I need a home loan, not a website.
Ditech.com is one of the largest direct lenders in the mortgage industry.
What about the rates?
Here's today's low fixed rate.
Oh. Can I use the mouse?
Be my guest. Ditech.com, your 24/7 mortgage solution. Call 1-800-71-FIXED.
Come to Pep Boys, where Jack's been cutting prices on hundreds of items like high-quality 80,000-mile Futura tires, now as low as 4 for $159, or 55,000-mile Futura tires as low as 4 for $129. Get an incredible deal on tires today at Pep Boys.
Is it fair to call you a handyman? You did install that new faucet. That faulty screen door? Faulty no more. And while you didn't build the deck, you did stain it. But to call you a handyman, no, maybe that's not the right word. Ace, you're a helpful hardware place.
Who can sign for a package when you're busy signing for lunch? Get a mailbox at Mailboxes Etc. and we'll help by receiving your UPS and FedEx packages. There's help in here, real help. What would you do with a Pontiac Grand Am?
We could probably put a little pep in our step, ladies. What's something we've never done before? Let's go go-karting and bump each other. How's mad driving? Look, Wisconsin! You guys want a punchy? It'll be a blast. Out to the meadow, baby. Whoa, GT. This car just flies.
What would you do with a Pontiac Grand Am?
Love you.
Tell us, Pontiac.com.
Tonight, a mysterious explosion sinks a Russian sub. Publicly, the world mourns, but secretly, Cold War suspicions run deep.
Must be the result of a collision between two submarines.
Absolutely not. It failed in a very catastrophic manner.
The effects were absolutely devastating.
It's a true story.
A horrible way to die.
A year of secrecy is unveiled in 1 hour. The Kursk Disaster at Sea. Tonight at 9 on TLC.
There's more information every day. The problem is busy people have less time to take it in. I'm Brian Williams, NBC News. Join us for our evening newscast each weeknight in prime time here on MSNBC, now available in Canada. We didn't invent 24-hour cable news, but we like to think we've made it better. So join us each weeknight to get the whole picture from NBC News and now in Canada on MSNBC.
Now more than ever, you want the latest and the most reliable news.
Starting today, you can watch Tech TV in Canada all day, every day.
This is such a fun show to do because we get to meet and greet with the best, the most interesting minds in the business.
Hey, welcome to Call for Help. You're watching Tech Live, and so are our neighbors to the north.
We're going to reveal a new gaming program from the makers of Oakland Cola called Twitch.
They're Canadian.
Warning, free preview ending. Call your cable or satellite provider today.
Astrid Harvey has dropped her son Christian off with a trusted babysitter and gone to work. She looks forward to seeing him at the end of the day. Christian and his babysitter walk along the railroad tracks near her home. They don't see or hear Amtrak number 557 speed up behind them until it's too late.
I was supposed to pick him up at 1, and I got home and I called, and there was no answer. And I even remember thinking, oh, they must be on a walk. So I called, and the man answered the phone, and he said, where are you? And they said, you stay there, we'll be there. There's been an accident, and your son didn't make it. You know, it's just, you know, those words are just bizarre to me. I just felt like I was being ripped through a tunnel.
At the last minute, the babysitter and his daughters had jumped off the tracks and out of the train's path. But Christian was still too close.
He was hit in the back of the head by the stairs of the train and thrown 75 feet.
Christian was killed instantly. The babysitter lost a leg. The two girls escaped uninjured. Trains are 2 or 3 times wider than the tracks they run on. Even if people are off the tracks, they aren't always out of the train's path. Through grief and anger, Astrid has begun a crusade to educate people about her son's story and the risks of walking the line.
Stay away from the railroad tracks. It's not a place where you should be, period. It's like walking on the highway and hoping not a car would come and get you.
Every year, nearly 600 pedestrians are killed on the 173,000 miles of track in the U.S. It's a problem that Charles Haygood studies. He's a pedestrian crossing specialist with the Federal Railroad Administration.
We have a mixture of population growth around train tracks where there used to be open space, and we now have cities growing up around these train tracks.
People walk the tracks assuming that if a train comes, they'll hear it. But new electric-powered locomotives are faster and quieter than ever. Even if a train engineer spots a pedestrian.
A fully loaded train traveling at 50 miles an hour usually takes anywhere from a mile to a mile and a half to stop.
Most people don't realize that walking along tracks is illegal. Christian was just one of 5,000 killed on American railways since 1990. At the accident site, Astrid placed a cross to honor her son and to remember how he died.
I feel very guided. Maybe I'm just choosing to listen to my instincts now and to be true to myself and to the memory of my son.
The pain that once paralyzed Astrid now energizes her. She wants to help other grieving parents by opening a healing center called Christian's Place.
I want to cry tears for him for the rest of my life. And it's not like it's there all the time. I have joy in my life now, and I have him. When I think about him now, I can smile at some of the memories, whereas before they were very painful. I've walked through. I just wish I had him back.
What Astrid has is the memory of a world seen through Christian's eyes. Joy and innocence that ended too soon. Sometimes it's not trains, but people who pose a danger. They work best in the shadows. The immediate objective, an act of terrorism. The ultimate goal, destabilize the government. They are saboteurs, linked to extreme right-wing terrorist groups. And to railroad companies, they represent the most difficult danger of all, because the enemy is unseen and unknown. There is no way to protect the vast expanse of American railroad track from their actions. October 1995, and Neil Halford can't wait to get on the Sunset Limited. He's leaving San Antonio for San Diego to see his girlfriend.
Well, I took the train because I'm actually a little bit phobic of flying, and so I'd been in the habit of taking trains pretty much wherever I was going cross country.
The Sunset's journey began in Miami. En route to Los Angeles, the trip will take 65 hours through miles of uninterrupted desert.
I had finally fallen asleep because it had been a long train ride up until that point.
The Sunset Limited streaks quietly through the desert night. Its 248 sleeping passengers oblivious to the danger ahead. Confused passengers in Neil's car look out into the darkness to find out what went wrong.
My assumption is that maybe we hit a cow or something like that. Nothing nearly as serious as what we later realized what had happened.
Neil Halford has no idea what lays behind him. Traveling at full speed, the train has derailed as it passed over a trestle. 4 of the passenger cars skipped the track and plunged 50 feet into a dry gully below. Neil's car made it safely to the other side. A full 45 minutes passes before help arrives. The accident occurred 6 miles from the nearest access road and 30 miles from the closest town. 1 person, an Amtrak employee, died in the derailment. 100 more were injured, 12 seriously. Some passengers stumble around in the dark searching for family and friends. Others are asked to stay on the train for fear of rattlesnakes in the desert. The air in Neil's car becomes unbearable in the hot desert night. He grows restless and ventures outside.
I look down and I see a piece of paper under a rock. At first I didn't even think a thing about it. The wheels in my head kind of start turning around and I'm saying, okay, well, we're on a train that's way out in the middle of nowhere. And here's this very clean-looking piece of paper, very conspicuously under a rock.
Under the pale light of a full moon, he deciphers a cryptic and disturbing message.
The first things that I read on the note is it's talking about the ATF and the FBI, and I only got through the first paragraph or so before the shock hit me, realizing what had just happened. This accidental derailment that I've been in suddenly goes from being an accident to an attempt to kill everybody on the train.
When Derailed returns, how authorities discover the bizarre motive behind the desert derailment.
So warm. So ancient. So free. And so close. Come and discover a world of possibilities. Mexico, closer than ever. Puerto Vallarta, where Mexico comes to life.
Imagine me and you.
Can I help you, sir?
No, thanks.
I'm good.
Lobsterfest is back at Red Lobster. Entrees start at just $10.99. Red Lobster, go overboard.
Introducing the totally transformed 2003 Corolla. It just wants to have fun.
At BASF, we don't make the snowboard, we make it stronger. We don't make a lot of the products you buy, we make a lot of the products you buy better. BASF.
The next 4 years, brought to you by the United States Postal Service.
Mom, I got in!
This week, University of Florida's basketball coach Billy Donovan took Nigel's shot clock challenge. Next week, it's University of Kentucky's basketball coach Tubby Smith's turn. How much does this big game expert really know about his school mascot? The Discovery Channel's animal expert Nigel Marvin puts him to the test. Next Saturday, discover the true expert on the big cat. Watch Nigel's Wild Wild World for the premiere of Big Cats. Next Saturday beginning at 8 Eastern and Pacific on the Discovery Channel.
Building the impossible comes to TLC. A team of experts constructs a really cool contraption. The challenge? A submarine invented nearly 400 years ago. Without original designs...
That's classified knowledge.
They must start from scratch.
It's exhausting.
Doubts begin to surface.
It's going to leak like a sieve.
Tensions mount.
There's no spare time at all.
It's sink or swim for the crafty crew. Building the impossible. The first submarine. Monday at 10 on TLC.
Amtrak Sunset Limited has derailed near Hyder, Arizona in the middle of the night. Everyone believes it's an accident until passenger Neil Halford discovers a note along the tracks. In it, terrorists claim responsibility for this act of destruction.
I'd realized by picking up the first note, I got my fingerprints all over it, and I'd probably ruined a crime scene. So the first thing I did is I went and I looked for one of those little footstools, and I went and put it over the top of this second note and sat down on top of it until some kind of authority figure arrived.
What he has found is a manifesto of sorts signed by a group calling itself Sons of the Gestapo. The note makes references to the sieges at Ruby Ridge, Idaho, and Waco, Texas, both acts of violent confrontation between the government and extremist groups.
but I was very angry because none of the people on this train had done anything to hurt these people. I mean, they were aiming their attack at the government, but you know, these were all civilian individuals.
This derailment in the middle of the desert came on the heels of the most destructive act of domestic terrorism in American history. Just 6 months earlier, 168 people died in the bombing of the Federal Building in Oklahoma City. FBI Special Agent Ed Hall is assigned to the case.
The location in which the individuals sabotaged the tracks was at a location where we believe that they were trying to do substantial damage. The individuals had come to this exact spot, and what they did is that they removed these two bolts separating the coupler of the two rails.
Saboteurs then connected an extra wire to keep the electrical circuit intact while they separated the track. Usually, any break in the rail will alert an electrical safety system, switching the signal to red. The saboteurs have tricked the internal safety system into believing the track was in top form.
Once the train got to this point, the locomotive basically went off the track. The left wheel went on the left side of this track. The right wheel was in the center.
The Sunset Limited hurtled toward the broken track on a green signal. Then, by pure luck, the first few cars hydroplaned along the damaged track and made it safely to the other side of the bridge. The 4 cars behind it weren't so lucky. While the FBI could easily recreate what the saboteurs had in mind, the job of figuring out exactly who were the sons of the Gestapo would prove to be much more difficult. Montgomery, Alabama, home of the Civil Rights Movement and, since 1971, home to the Southern Poverty Law Center. Here, Mark Potok and his colleagues track the movements of each and every terrorist group they believe exists in the nation.
No, we define them as essentially anti-government and shot through with conspiracy theories.
Over the years, the bulk of the Southern Poverty Law Center's work has been monitoring and revealing the actions of the radical right. People like the Ku Klux Klan and neo-Nazis. In later years, anti-government factions have spun off from these groups.
These are groups that essentially promote violence or kind of violent confrontation with the federal government, you know, on the basis of very conspiracy-laden beliefs about what the federal government's up to.
The Southern Poverty Law Center estimates there are approximately 400 such anti-government groups active in the United States, with a large number in southwestern Arizona. The attack on the Sunset Limited near Hyder, Arizona falls right into that area.
There's been a lot of talk and some action on the radical right about attacking infrastructure. It seems to me obvious that, you know, the attack in Hyder may very well have been something along those lines.
According to the Southern Poverty Law Center, terrorist attacks on infrastructure don't usually require the work of large and established organizations.
By and large, the most dangerous attacks come from single individuals or very tiny groups. You know, I think that a whole series of these attacks really have come down to one person.
For someone who is determined to vandalize the rails or sabotage the rails, chances are no one's going to see you if you're here at night. So the opportunity's always there if someone's really determined to do an act like this.
There is still a $320,000 reward for the arrest and conviction of anyone associated with the sabotage of Sunset Limited. The sons of the Gestapo have avoided the law, this time. Rail companies hope there will never be a next time. When Derailed returns, a train filled with skiers heads into an alpine tunnel, never to reach the other side.
With document distribution from Canon, you can send a document to different locations instantly. Print it in one office, email it to another, and send volumes somewhere else, all at the same time. Hey, welcome to the new office. It's business accelerated.
E.T.'s back, and you can see him for free. When you buy Reese's candy, you can get free movie tickets. See in-store displays for details.
Come to Pep Boys for all of your car care needs. Buy an Energizer battery starting as low as $69.99. Get an Energizer battery at Pep Boys today and we'll guarantee it for 24 months and give you free jumpstart service for 3 years. Come to Pep Boys for an Energizer battery today.
Whoa, Carrie Earnhardt.
Woo! Nice ride, Carrie. Yeah, she gets me around. How about let me take her for a spin? That ain't gonna happen. Give you $1. Show me what you got. You letting them drive this car for $1? Man, $1 buys a lot with 10, 220. All calls up to 20 minutes are 99 cents and 7 cents a minute after that. Hey, man, be careful. I'll be careful as soon as you help me put this wheel.
Dial 1010-220.
Tonight on TLC. He wrote the last letter of his life.
None of us can escape to the surface.
As he drew his final breaths, what really happened at the bottom of the Bering Sea?
It failed in a very catastrophic manner. The cold, the hypothermia.
You saw it on the news. Now you can feel it in your bones.
The truth about this must be told.
The Kursk, Disaster at Sea. Tonight at 9 on TLC.
The smoothest place on your radio. Smooth Jazz. Wave 94.7. Stress-free workdays begin with Smooth Jazz.
Hold me closer to your heart.
Playing extended wavelengths of smooth jazz. Smoother workdays begin with Smooth Jazz. Wave 94.7.
Edgy music, British sitcoms, movies as short as my attention span.
Me, my couch, and any hot actor I want for the weekend.
Turn on to digital TV. Get a digital box only $99.99. Pick and pay from tons of new digital channels, movies, sports, pay-per-view, and more. Coachco, keeping you turned on.
November 11th, 2000, Kaprun, Austria. It was a day made for skiing. Brilliant sunshine and a blanket of fresh snow. Ideal conditions. Daniel Hartle was determined to take advantage of it. The athletic 12-year-old excelled at just about every sport. Skiing was no different.
It was the cool, hip thing to do. He was fascinated by the sport. For an Austrian boy who grows up so close to the mountain, skiing is the sport to do.
Daniel Hartle makes his way onto the platform of the Gletscherbahn train car to begin the long ascent up to skiing heaven, the Kitzsteinhorn Glacier, nearly 1,000 feet above sea level. It's a steep 8-minute ride over the alpine slopes below. But before reaching the top, the Gletscherbahn will cut through an almost 2-mile tunnel straight through the mountain. The Gletscherbahn train was built in the 1970s as a faster, more efficient alternative to the gondola. It was the first rail car of its kind to tunnel through a mountain. The train is guided along a 40-degree slope by a thick cable. And in 1994, it was upgraded with fire-resistant materials for maximum safety. 9 o'clock a.m. Daniel and his ski coach scramble to make one of the first runs of the day. The doors of the sleek train close behind them. As the Gletscherbahn begins its slow ascent up the side of the mountain, the alpine ski village grows ever smaller in the distance. The train disappears into the mouth of the tunnel. Expectant passengers believe that in a few short minutes they'll be at the top of the Kitzsteinhorn for a full day of skiing and snowboarding. Inside the dark tunnel, only headlights guide the way through stretches of the narrow passage. Midway through, something is wrong. The train grinds to a halt. In a heartbeat, the excitement and anticipation of skiing is transformed into confusion. And then terror when the train fills with smoke. Seconds later, the cabin is engulfed by flames, and there is no way out. 162 people are trapped, and panic erupts. Frantic skiers bash at windows that won't break. It is pitch black and the smoke is overpowering. There is little air left. Quickly, skiers succumb, then panic. At home, Daniel's parents are listening to the radio when they first hear reports of a fire in the mountain tunnel in Kaprun.
We immediately decided to drive to Kaprun. During the ride to Kaprun, which takes about 2 hours, we tried to phone Daniel on his cell phone. We tried to reach his coach. We tried to reach any other coaches from his team.
A frantic Norbert and his wife continue to listen to the radio news reports as they drive through the Zillertal Valley to the resort.
The ride to Kaprun was actually a horror trip of emotions. My wife already felt that something very awful had happened. But I felt there had to be a logical explanation. There are 2,000 skiers in the area. Why should he necessarily be among the 150 in the tragic train?
Up at the ski hill, officials mount a massive rescue operation. 13 helicopters and an army of police, doctors, and Red Cross workers converge at the site. But the toxic fumes and extreme heat keep them from reaching the train.
This was about 1.5 hours after the accident when the first rescue teams were able, and they were from the fire brigade, to go near to the scene of accident. And then we really knew that it must be a terrible situation there.
The Hartles head directly to the youth hostel where a crisis center has been set up. Meanwhile, a rescue helicopter picks up the fortunate few who manage to escape and stagger to the lower tunnel entrance. The fire continues to rage inside. After vital hours, firefighters are still unable to gain access. The rescue operation will soon turn into a recovery effort. Inside the crisis center, lists are posted. They include the names of everyone alive and accounted for on the entire mountain. This process of elimination is the only way to determine who was on the train. The Hartles scour the list for Daniel's name. The hours pass by. List after list is posted. Daniel's name does not appear on any of them. Reality sinks in.
And that last list, for me, that was the absolute list of death. If he wasn't on that list, meant there was no more Daniel. It meant he was on the tragedy train. Just walking towards that list to get the strength to look at it was one of the most awful things that I have ever done in my life.
Daniel, the promising young ski racer, would not return home with his parents that day. He and 154 others died when the train entered the Kitzsteinhorn tunnel and never came out. Only 12 people survived. In the ongoing investigation into the tragedy, preliminary findings point to an oil leak that caught fire inside the tunnel. Then, fresh air drawn in from the base of the tunnel fanned the fire. The temperatures in the tunnel reached more than 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit in the enclosed space. Those who survived managed to break a window and flee downhill in the tunnel, away from the deadly smoke and flames. But the tunnel itself lacked any firefighting equipment or emergency lighting. Norbert Hartel does not want his son's death to be in vain.
It needs to be said that there are many more tunnels and trains just like this all over Europe, but especially in Austria. And what happened in Kaprun could repeat itself any day.
In 1996, a similar fire inside the Channel Tunnel rail system linking England and France could have been disastrous. The fire raged for 8 hours in the enclosed space. But because of parallel emergency tunnels, passengers escaped unscathed.
We have 3 tubes. This means there are a lot of extra place to escape and to bring help to the tunnel as quick as possible.
Bernd Abrol is a tunnel safety expert. He's head of tunneling with Deutsche Mountain Technology, the company testing heat and fire-resistant tunnel lining as well as the materials used to make rail cars. Abrol says making a train fireproof is not enough.
They tried to prevent a fire. They used special materials, but they were not prepared what happened in case of a fire. So
Firefighting systems were missing.
In Europe, there are nearly 9,000 miles of tunnels for trains, subways, and cars. Some are up to 150 years old. Many of these older tunnels are being updated with the latest safety technology. In Bad Leonfelden, Daniel's parents are still grieving the loss of their only son.
My last impression of Daniel is that he had matured to be a man. He was on the brink of adolescence and moving further and further away from being a child.
Avid skiers have returned to the Kitzsteinhorn. Its fast slopes still draw thousands to Kaprun. Now, the only way to reach the mountaintop is by gondola. But no one passes by without a reminder of what happened here, and the tunnel remains closed. Next, the price engineers pay when drivers ignore warnings.
Can you find the sports car in the newest Mazda?
Zoom, zoom, zoom. Ha. Zoom, zoom, zoom. Yeah, zoom, 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 zoom. Zoom, zoom, zoom.
The new 200 horsepower Mazda MPV.
Yeah, zoom.
Body of a minivan. Soul of a sports car.
Who can sign for a package when you're busy signing for lunch?
Hang on. Help us ride this way.
Get a mailbox at Mailboxes Etc. and we'll help by receiving your UPS and FedEx packages. There's help in here, real help.
Here we go.
Here's your house. Oh, terrific. Here's your house. She's good. Yes. Winner. Super. Stupid. Okay.
If it were this easy to win a new house...
You get a house.
Yeah. You wouldn't need to enter the Century 21 Home Run Derby Sweepstakes, where you could win $250,000 toward a new home. Enter at a participating office near you.
Hey, he was here yesterday.
No, I wasn't.
Yes, you were.
No, I wasn't.
Imagine me and you.
Can I help you, sir?
No, thanks.
I'm good.
Lobsterfest is back at Red Lobster. Entrees start at just $10.99. Red Lobster, go overboard.
At Ditech.com, when we say we're ready when you are, we really mean it. Just log on to our website or call us at 1-800-71-FIXED.
Right now, you can apply for a low fixed-rate mortgage that may help lower your monthly payments or cash out some of your equity.
Ditech.com loan agents are always ready to assist you, like right now.
It's fast, it's easy, it's a smart solution from Ditech.com. Apply online or call us right now at 1-800-71-FIXED.
Your pet's exact same heartworm and flea medications delivered to your door for less than you're paying now. 1-888-PET-MEDS. We deliver savings and convenience on HeartGuard, Advantage, Frontline, and all other pet medications. Call to order now or order online.
It's so zen. I think it rocks. Magnificent.
Please, it's all of that and more.
Best of TLC Week on exhibit every night starting at 8. It all starts Sunday, March 10th, only on TLC.
TLC brings the past to life in a brand new special. A group of experts recreates an ingenious invention, the world's first wooden submarine, using only original materials.
The worst case scenario, a massive failure in the timber planking.
The challenge requires teamwork.
Lots of decisions still to be made.
Know-how.
I bloody well don't want it to sink to the bottom.
And nerves of steel.
No steering, no power.
It's terrifying.
Building the impossible, the first submarine. Monday at 10 on TLC.
Tonight on Junkyard Invasion Week.
The finals, where the teams build sophisticated machines and then use them as battering rams. Junkyard Invasion Week, building bashers. Tonight at 8, only on TLC.
Tonight, a mysterious explosion sinks a Russian sub. Publicly, the world mourns, but secretly, Cold War suspicions run deep.
Must be the result of a collision between two submarines.
Absolutely not. It failed in a very catastrophic manner. The effects were absolutely devastating.
It's a true story.
A horrible way to die.
A year of secrecy is unveiled in 1 hour. The Kursk, Disaster at Sea. Tonight at 9 on TLC.
These images are spellbinding, but to the casual observer, they are fleeting. To the engineer whose train created such carnage, these images are seared in memory forever. To a locomotive engineer, those sickening seconds before a collision are excruciating. Because there is nothing he can do to stop his train in time. All he can do is wait for the impact. His life, if he lives, will never be the same again.
The camera doesn't show you the guys in that locomotive. The camera doesn't show you that some guy's off work for a month or 3 months, or in one case, 8 months, because he hasn't got the guts to get back on that thing.
More than 250,000 miles of railroad track crisscross North America. Along the way, just as many marked and unmarked railroad crossings. And where road meets rail, often there is carnage. But railway crossings are so commonplace, so taken for granted we rarely think of them as risk. A fatal error for the 600 American motorists killed last year alone. More than double that number were injured. Some didn't see the warnings, some simply ignored them. Saskatchewan, Canada, called the land of the living skies, the wide open landscape is a railroader's dream. Tom Armstrong is a third-generation railroader. His father and grandfather worked the rails.
There's a romance about the railway, and it was something that I've always wanted to do. And it seemed like it was what I was supposed to do.
The Armstrong family's love affair with the railroad has always been slightly tainted. In his career, Tom's father, Roy, survived over 30 collisions, resulting in 9 deaths. Early on, Tom learned the reality of railroading.
I'd get up in the morning and Mom would say, "Hold the noise down because your dad's train killed somebody last night."
Tom followed in his father's footsteps. Despite knowing the risks, railroading was already in his blood.
When I hired on the railway, he told me, he says, "No, this'll happen." He says, "You make the best of it."
Tom had been an engineer for 15 years. In that time, he'd experienced many close calls and accidents, but no fatalities. All that changed in April 1992. Train number 404. With 3 heavy engines, the more than half-mile of train winds its way slowly out of the station. Tom is at the controls.
Well, the trip didn't last that long.
The train is barely beyond city limits when Tom's brakeman cries out.
I didn't understand what he yelled at, but I was just going across the crossing at the time, and I knew it had to be one thing.
Tom immediately throws on the emergency brakes, but a train of this size will still take a full mile to stop.
I had 3 engines, 9,000 horsepower, and when this went out, it hit 60 miles an hour. We went halfway through a little truck. And that was my trip. 3 miles.
Inside that little truck, 2 women out for a day of dog training. They never see the train coming. The driver recovers after 3 months in a coma.
The other woman was killed instantly. It was a very devastating crash. And that's it. Her life ended right there, that split second. And as it turned out, I knew her.
The woman was pregnant and the mother of an 18-month-old little boy. Tom, numb and in shock, goes home to an echo from his childhood.
The kids were quite a bit younger at that time, and I listened to Brenda give them the same speech I got as a kid. Hold the noise down, that one. And that was tough.
Tom is consumed by guilt. In his mind, he replays the scene over and over again.
Maybe if I had throttled up a little slower that day, maybe if we had a little trouble with one of the cars in our brake test, maybe.
If only, if only, if only.
Something psychologist Toby Snellgrove has heard countless times from countless engineers who've experienced the trauma of a crossing collision.
The probability that an engineer will experience a critical incident stress during their career, to me, would be 99%. It's not a question of if they'll have a shocking event, but rather when.
And when they do, life turns upside down.
Well, their sleep could be disrupted to the point that they can't get sleep. Or they find themselves having flashbacks that shake them up very much.
For years, railroaders involved in fatal accidents were forced to return to the job almost immediately. No discussion, no counseling. Only 1 week after the fatal crash, Tom returns to work.
Well, I was paranoid, and I'm ready to put the brakes in an emergency, even for a bird. I mean, this is unreal.
It's his first day back on the job. In the distance, he sees a woman pushing a baby in a stroller. There's also a toddler at her side.
She takes a look, and she sees that we're a short train, and she starts to run.
Tom can't believe what he's seeing.
And I applied the brakes, because I know it's going to take us a long way to stop.
The scene unfolds in slow motion. Tom braces himself for the worst.
When the stroller hit the first rail, the wheels dropped down in the flangeway. The wheels got lodged in there. Some gentleman came running from, I don't know where he came from. He came out and started to grab and flip and try and get the stroller out.
Suddenly, the brakes dig in. Tom's train stops just 100 feet short of the young family.
I couldn't walk. My legs collapsed. You know, after experiencing what I've been through, first trip back, this happens.
You don't get over a trauma. What you have to do with a trauma is that you have to integrate it into your life in some way.
Group therapy is how Toby Snellgrove helps engineers integrate the experience of a crash. And it's here where engineers often counsel each other.
The incident itself, to this day, is the sound for me.
Right, yeah.
I'll never forget that sound.
Right.
Each time I go by that crossing it, I always kind of tense up a little bit and blow the whistle a little
right.
Longer. And
in the future, global positioning satellites will monitor cars from space, alerting engineers of their location well in advance. Until GPS comes into common usage, railroads are considering more cost-effective technology like this automated horn system that blares at cars approaching the track. Other options are variations on the crossing arm, like this safety barrier gate. Vehicles repel off it as though hitting a brick wall.
My request of you tonight is that if you learn something here this evening, share it with somebody that you love.
And every chance he gets, Tom Armstrong speaks about railway safety, because he has yet another reason to be vigilant. Son Murray is a conductor in Alberta, and Robbie is a conductor even closer to home.
Oh, well, look at the good side. At least you're working with your favorite engineer.
They too have become railroaders like their father, grandfather, and great-grandfather before them.
My dad was a railroader, 42 years. He's been retired now 21. That's 63 years. We're still hurting people. Something's got to be done.